Welcome to another Gamma Partner Artist Feature interview. Today we chat with Timmboslice. Tim is a photographer, more specifically an aerial photographer, who flies his drone over the Australian oceans, shooting the waves, shooting the whales. He's hugely accomplished. I think you're going to enjoy this conversation. Very stoked, as we say in Australia, to have my friend and Gamma Partner artist Tim with us today. Tim is a photographer who you are probably well aware of, an aerial ocean photographer. I'm sure he does other things as well. Very excited to dig right in. He has been in the space for quite a while, but enough from me. The best person to tell his story is the man himself. Tim, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me, mate. Yeah, so like you said, I am an ocean-based photographer here in Australia. I live in Canberra, which is the capital. And it's less than ideal living here being an ocean photographer because it's nowhere near the ocean. Like, we're surrounded by bush and gum trees. It's the typical place you think Australia is, just covered by bushlands. Getting into photography, it's kind of unique in a way because I never wanted to be a photographer. Like, I'm a full-time firefighter here. It's my dream. Like, since I was a kid, all I ever wanted to do was be a firefighter, and I never grew out of it, and it just became a childhood dream, and I get to live that dream every day. And that'll be my career for the rest of my life. Like, I don't ever see, no matter how successful I am in this space or photography, that's just always what I want to do. I love helping people. It's just part of who I am. And back to photography, I feel like photography really, like, it has changed my life more so than my career, because I never set out to be a photographer. At the start of COVID, we got heavy lockdowns. You would have experienced that down in Melbourne. Like, it was a pretty chaotic time, and we had sort of a small window where we were allowed outside for an hour or so. And I'm a very active person. I love being outdoors, and the fact that I couldn't do it for much, for very long periods of time, I thought, what can I do to like explore and see things around me? So I thought I'd buy a drone. Launch it from the backyard where no one can really tell. It's probably against the law at the time, but so I bought a drone. And was just flying it out of my backyard. We've got a river over the back of our house. I thought I'll just fly and, fly up and down the river and have a look. And that really kicked off everything. Like, I never looked back. I was taking photos of the river and like just a couple of rocks, like just there's no subject whatsoever. I was just taking photos of rocks, and I was so proud. I showed my wife. I was like, look at the picture of this rock. Like, how cool is that? And she's looking at me like, that's a nice rock. And from there, we started traveling to the coast. We love going to the coast always. Like, that never changed. We just go to the beach and just hang out, because that's where we've sort of always felt most happiest. And took my drone down, started taking some photos of the beach, and it just found this passion inside me that I didn't even know I had. And before then, I was hooked, like absolutely hooked. I'm very hyper focused on things when I want to do it. And I started following creators who had drones. Like, I never, I didn't follow any creators on Instagram or any sort of social media thing. I just used it for my personal stuff. And started looking at all these amazing photos that all these creators were taking with the same drone that I had. And my pictures were, they weren't that good because everyone has to start somewhere, right? And I just kind of got a little bit stubborn in the way that I wanted to learn as much as I could. Like, I didn't know what shutter speed was. I didn't know, I just knew nothing about photography, which in the way that it worked out was probably the best thing, because I just had a clean slate to learn with a fresh brain, and I was really interested in it. And from there, it just kicked off. I started chatting to other creators, meeting new people all around Australia, across the world. Like, I had a really good group of friends in America who were drone addicts, if you want to call them that. And we would just talk drones nonstop. And it kind of felt like I found my people. Like, it was something that I was really passionate about with technology. And, it's basically like getting to go out and play with a toy, but I was getting something sort of at the end of it where I could use my creativity, coming home and creating something. Because I find that you go out and take a photo, but the magic kind of happens when you get back into the computer and put it all together, and you kind of get snippets out of what you've taken. So yeah, from there, I just started growing my following, which I never view myself as a creator or anything like that. It just happened really organically. I was just sharing what I love doing. I was going down to my the local rivers and just making like little videos here and there of like what I do on my days off, because being a firefighter, I have lots and lots of time off, and I try and make the most of it. Like, I go out and explore, I go for walks, bush walks, and now it's going for a 2-hour drive down to the coast every 4 days. But yeah, it just kicked off from there, where I was just posting posting stuff that I was just doing. Like it's never been forced. I still view it as a hobby today. And the more I started going to the ocean and seeing more, like, I guess, the beauty within the waves and stuff like that, it just kept unlocking this creativity. And I tie it back to like people who draw, who don't just see the world as the world is. They see it in shapes where they can draw it, and they just, they look at an arm and they see a cylinder and they see all these little things off, and that's how they draw it. I see the same thing when I look at waves. You can look at a wave and it always looks the same, but there's always these brief little moments when a wave crashes, and I just see this beautiful sort of art within the wave, and that's what I try and capture. And it takes a long time because waves crash every few seconds, but there's just that one where it has that special moment in it, and that's the moment that I'll hover there for 40 minutes if I have to capture just one wave. And then obviously all the nature and wildlife that comes with it that's in the ocean, like it's just such a beautiful place on Earth, where I think it probably stems to when we go to the coast. My family and I were already on a holiday as such. We're in a good mood. It puts me in a good mood, so it kind of makes everything easier. Like I'm already happy to be there, so I just capture these photos of the water.
Something that you've talked about before, you said the ocean is like generative art. It's always changing. You're sort of trying to find those unique moments. How do you know, or what stands out to you in those moments, like that one wave crash that really speaks to you?
It's just the moment when a wave crashes and the sheer power comes behind the wave and interacts with the earth below it. And obviously when there's not a lot of force behind the wave, they kind of just fizzle out, if for want of a better word. But there's a couple of times when the swell just catches up with itself, and that moment where it just crashes over itself, and it's like this cool, calm chaos for a split second, and then it disappears. And it's weird. Like my eye just sees it, and I forever just look at waves, waiting for it. And we'll be out for dinner, like the club, sort of near the ocean. I'll be just looking at the waves, and my wife goes, "Stop it! You got to stop looking at the waves." And I'm like, "Oh, that was a big one. We could have taken the..." So it just stems like that. And it is nature's generative art form. Generative art is a really hot topic in the NFT space. But at the same time, we have generative art all around us if you just want to go and look for it. And the ocean it's the best one out there. We're surrounded by it everywhere. It connects us all around the world. So I think it really needs to be celebrated and shared.
Has it changed your perception of the world around you since you've started taking photographs of it?
Absolutely. Conservation was, I don't want to sound negative on it, but conservation was never at the top of my mind growing up, or even leading into my career. I just wasn't around it or aware of it, especially living in the bush. You kind of just oblivious to it, I guess. And it wasn't until I started taking photos of the ocean and capturing whales and seeing whales with fishing line wrapped around them, or nets and stuff or just rubbish floating in the water, like stuff that we can control. It kind of started making me upset because I love the ocean, and it'd be kind of harsh of me to love the ocean so much but then not look after it. So we started making a rule every time we go to the beach, which it's kind of it's a crappy rule in a way that we can do it, but we'd always leave with 3 pieces of rubbish. So my boys all learn every time we go to the beach, we pick up 3 pieces of rubbish. And it's sad that we can actually find easily 3 pieces of rubbish each. Like, it'd be ideal if we could spend an extra 40 minutes mucking around at the beach to try and find 3 pieces of rubbish, but ultimately it's always there. So it's not a massive change, but I think any change is some change. And I think sharing through the digital world as well, or even online in the Web2 space, the more that we can highlight sort of the beauty of the ocean, the more we can appreciate it, and the more that people will take notice of sort of, we could ruin it if we don't look after it.
And let's go back to that learning journey that you talked about when you first got your drone and then got involved in drone communities and started taking photos and learning more. How was that process, and what did you do to get from point A to the point that you're at now?
Yeah, it's pretty funny. Like I crashed a drone, I cried. I was so upset because it was like my pride and joy, my favorite thing to do. And it's actually quite a funny story. The first time I crashed my drone, I've only ever crashed, I've crashed twice, but one really bad one. So there's a big dam just down sort of in between Canberra and New South Wales. And there's this beautiful archway. It's called the London Bridges, and it's just like a rock limestone formation where the river runs underneath it. And I thought it'd be brilliant to get this drone shot flying through it. And I was actually thinking about it the other night, like just how stupid it was. Like, and it could have been an easy shot to do, but I was just inexperienced, and I was out learning, trying to hone my craft. It went in, it crashed and it was in the water. And I know it's not a deep river. It was the middle of winter. And I was committed, like, because if you don't get it back, you can't send it back to get them to fix it. Like, it's just gone. And that it was expensive at the time. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to go get this. I stripped off. I was in my undies. There was no one else around. So it was pretty easy. I got up to about my waist and just realized it was a lot deeper than I thought. And it was freezing. So and I was just going along, just plodding my foot around trying to find this drone. I knew I was close. I was not close. And all of a sudden, it's like half of Canberra came to visit this dam all of a sudden. So they see this idiot in the middle of winter in his undies, just walking around in the middle of the water. And this lady had her kid and she's like, oh, we've got to go. Like, this is not good. I'm like, I'm really sorry. I'm just here trying to get my drone. And I got out, went home, couldn't get the drone. I was wet, cold, so upset. And that was like one of the learning curves that I had. Like, you know, don't, if it's risky, just don't do it. But yeah, from there, like I didn't know much about photography. Hey, like I only just got my first ever DSLR camera last year. So I never had a handheld camera. My photography basically stemmed from my iPhone. So that was the extent of my photography. It was auto, click, push, happy days. Didn't know anything about editing. And I think the best learning curve was just going out there and doing it. The only way to get better at something is to keep practicing and practicing and practicing. And I was taking photos of everything I could, whether it be, the bush, the river, the ocean, my backyard, anything that I could do to fly the drone with sunsets. I was just practicing nonstop and then bouncing ideas off other people, learning what they did, how they did things, their editing styles. And it was all just trial and error. And I really loved it. It was just so much fun to be unlocking this creativity that kept me interested and with something to do. And yeah, from there, I started getting noticed by people that I looked up to online. So when I started off, I was following these big creators who were taking amazing photos, and they still do. And then when they were starting to sort of comment back and notice me, I was thinking, wow, like maybe I have a shot at this to give it a go.
How was that process in terms of getting noticed, and then that aspect of working in this space that you do need to do your own marketing and be on social media and things like that?
Yeah, so I always try and take a very simple approach. I think as soon as you make things, like when you overcomplicate things, it all goes to shit, more or less. So I was basically taking the approach of when I'm scrolling, looking at something, what made me stop and look at that picture for more than 2 seconds? And then I was trying to replicate that with my own photos. So if I'm looking at something and it's made me stop and actually look at it, well, what is good about that photo? The way it's framed, is it what it is, where it is it somewhere that I've been before, or is it the unique angle that they captured it, or anything, like something like that. So I took that approach with when I was going to capture something. So if it was a landmark that I'd seen photoed before, I didn't just want to go and take a photo that's already been done. I wanted to take it in my own way and express it in a way that maybe people have never seen before. And that for me just happened with the ocean. Like, we go to the beach every day, you see the waves, but I thought, well, how can I show the waves in a way that you've never seen before? And that's when I started filming them and playing them in reverse, and then just how watching a wave sort of unfold on itself backwards, just how beautiful it is. And it started just stemming from there. People were really interested in it, and that was what was making people stop and look at my stuff and engage with me as a creator. And that passion just never stopped. So I was kind of almost stubborn in a way, looking at like, well, why are they successful? What can I do to replicate what they're doing and put my own little spin on it?
Yeah, and then to further elaborate on that, you mentioned before about a lot of the magic happens then when you come home, and you just said doing things in reverse and playing with the editing process. Yeah, tell us about the programs that you use. You don't have to tell us all your tips and tricks, but the how that learning has evolved and what you do, because the editing process, I think a lot of people don't understand the intricacies that go into it. You don't just take a photo and sell it.
Yeah, that's right. For every hour you're out filming, there's probably like, say, 5 times that when you're at home on the computer, just scrubbing and editing and buffering and color grading and all that sort of stuff. But I use Adobe Lightroom like everyone else, even though there's a little bit of controversy around it at the moment where they're stealing everything. But it's the workflow that I know, and if they want to steal my stuff, go for it. Like, we've been posting on socials for years where they've been stealing our stuff. So what difference does it make if the editing platform wants to do it? That's my opinion anyway. And I use Final Cut Pro, which is just integrated into the Mac. And I find it really it's what I know, and I find it easy with my workflow. I've built my workflow because learning photography from scratch, I was also learning editing from scratch. So I've built my workflow up through trial and error, and you kind of I know what to capture, and I know how I'm going to edit it after I've captured it. I capture it sort of in a way that I know that I can edit it. And that sort of workflow just came from taking literally thousands of photos and knowing what's going to be editable and what's not. And then sort of the more I did that and realized, well, that photo wasn't very good. Like, why did I take that? Now I'm a little bit more selective when I press the shutter, and it kind of just improves your workflow again. Once you have a sort of a better bank of editable photos, it cuts down on your workflow and you get a better product, which is weird when you're marketing yourself in the Web3 world, because everyone kind of likes the big hero story about, this shot took 20 years in the making or something. And sometimes it's like, well, you know what? This shot only took me 2 minutes to get, and it took me 10 minutes to edit, but it took me 2 years of learning how to make it take 2 minutes and 10 minutes of editing. So that's one of those things where I think time, especially being a photographer, it's a hard story to market, because people want the big bang story. But sometimes if you just, I don't want to sound arrogant, but if you're good at something, you're usually quicker at it. But it was bad for marketing, PR. So
yeah, it's an interesting one. I can't remember the story. There was an artist that sold it was a drawing or a painting that they did in some, extraordinarily quick amount of time. And they said, oh, but you only took X amount of time to do that. It's like, yeah, but it took me that many years to be able to do that. So I think it's certainly a worthwhile point. There still is like I'm going to call it a chasm. Maybe it's a little bit of a too strong a word, but in the Web3, let's call it NFT ordinal space, with like respect for art collectors and photography. And I think it's growing. I think it's improving. But why do you think that is? Well, we don't have to spend too long here.
Why there is a respect?
Yeah, like, no, why there sometimes is almost a disrespect for photography, or like a less of a market for it just at the moment. I love photography, as you know, but if you compare it across the space and we just see what photographers have to deal with, I thought let's briefly touch on it, because it's an interesting one.
Yeah, look, art is art, right? So you're trained to like what you like, and there's no way we can change that. The best thing you can do is focus on what you create and then share that love with others. You can't force it. We can share it, and that's basically the bottom line. I was even just looking at a super rare piece that's going right now, and it's an AI generated piece through Boto of a landscape. Like, it's a landscape photo, but created through AI. And I think there's some amazing photographers that capture this stuff in real life, like of the aurora, and like just to be in that moment and capture it and share it for real life, like that to me should be skyrocketing, because it is the world that we live in. It's not, and it is created digitally in some form, because they have to bring it back to the computer and create it and edit it and put their little spin on it. So for me, I don't have the answer why it's not loved, but photography is one of the most consumed media things on earth. It's on the news. We're doing media right now with video. Everything we look at in the newspaper, if there's a picture on it, we're going to read the story. It's not going anywhere, and it's been around for so long. So I think over time, it might get more popular. I mean, everything in the market is all subjective at the moment. It's a really slow time, but as long as we all stick together and just keep sharing what we love, then I think no matter what genre it is, whether it be like music, NFTs, or generative art, it's all going to work out.
Yeah, I think that's really well answered, and I completely agree with you. I was just curious to get it from the creator's point of view. So let's focus on the positive stuff. I still am curious about that learning process. And like you said, learning about shutter speed and aperture and all of those things, where do you see yourself now in comparison to where you started in terms of like knowledge with photography, and where do you want to go with it?
Yes, I just remember another ocean photographer who I really like. I messaged him, and he was taking these photos of surfers as they were sort of snapping back on the wave, and it was crystal, like so sharp. And I was like, my photos are all blurry. Like, what am I doing wrong? And I messaged him, and I was like, I said, what are your settings? Like, what settings do you use to capture this? And his shutter speed was, like 1/1250 or something. And I was like, oh, mine's like 1/50. And I look back at it now, and I'm like, I'm taking like long exposure photos of an action scene. I had no idea, but it's on the screen, it was nice and bright and looked good. And I'm like, oh yeah, so it must be a good photo, right? And right now, that's not the case. So, and looking at it now, especially with the following that I've sort of generated, I have people messaging me genuinely, like asking, what drone do you use? What do you use to edit? What were your settings? And these are all the questions that I was asking when I was starting out. And I always reply. Like, I don't care if what country they're from, how many followers they've got. Like, I remember being that person and getting rejected, sending people messages, because it was almost like a competition between creators where, like, well, if I give away my secrets, then they're going to overtake me or something like that. But, like, they just want to go out and have fun and take a good photo as well. So, like, there doesn't need to be this competition. Like, we need to, like, upbring it and celebrate it and share what we know. Like, because the magic comes from up here. Like, you put your own spin on stuff and then you become the creator. You can go to the same place and take 10 different photos from 10 different people because they all have a different sort of creative mind or creative vision of the space.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that like, it sounds like a cliche, but the rising tide lifts all boats, and more people creating photography will bring more eyes on it. So it's a great point. You mentioned before about taking photos of sea creatures, and I know we're going to have a look at it soon, but you've taken some incredible shots of whales. And, since being a little kid, I've loved whales. So it super resonated with me. But yeah, talk to us about the difference when you're shooting whales or sea creatures. I don't know if you've shot other ones, you can tell us, versus when you're out there just shooting waves or sunsets and different things. Yeah, what's that experience like? And I remember in a space the other day, you said how, hovering your drone just above crashing waves can be, feel a little bit risky, so like electronics don't love water. But yeah, how's that process and the experience, and, what do you feel when you're doing it? And then what are some of the, some of your best experiences?
Yeah, well, they're two completely different mediums. So capturing waves, I'm pretty close to the shore. Obviously, I can keep my eye on the drone. I can monitor the height through the screen and with my own eyes, because you kind of want to push the boundaries a little bit to get as close as you can to the waves. And the waves are sort of crashing in a similar spot every time. So it's quite easy. Well, I don't want to say it's easy, but it's easier to take photos of the waves when you can see what's going on. The whales, on the other hand, one, you've got to be able to see them from the shore to know where they are. You can't just fly out and hope for the best, although sometimes you do. So they could be anywhere from 2 kilometers to 5 kilometers out to sea. And it's not until you start, you look out at rock faces and stuff, and you think that they're really close, but 2 kilometers out to sea is quite a long way, especially with a 40 centimeter drone flying out trying to capture a 10-ton whale. The combo is just not there, for success. So the thing that works best for me, especially with capturing the whales, is looking out and seeing where they are. And you kind of gauge by the spouts, like, how far away it is. Like, you can just see in the distance, if it's really far out in the distance, there's no chance that I'm going to be able to get out there fast enough and be able to see them, and then sort of have enough juice in the tank left to come home as well. Because that's something you really need to consider. Is it's all well and good getting out there to see the whales, but I need to make sure that I can fly the drone back. Otherwise, it was all for nothing. So with waves, I could hover there for 40 minutes and have 20 seconds left and just land it in my hand and I'm done. So with whales, though, when you get a bull run going up the coastline, you'll see 5 or 6 spouts. And when they're in close, that's like ecstasy for me. Like, seeing the whales just all spouting, jumping close. I can send the drone out, and what I'll do is I'll make sure they take off in the direction that I first saw the spout, and I'll kind of use my peripheral vision with the controller, keeping it on the horizon, but sort of looking out and looking for the spouts. And then I'll try and look at the screen at the same time when I know the spouts are still in the air of the horizon. And then I kind of get a lock on the screen of where they are and keep heading in that direction. And I just do that until I sort of get in the vicinity of where I think they are, and hope. Sometimes I've done that, I've gone out, and then they just dive under and they carry on their way underwater for like 15 minutes and you lose them. And it's really upsetting, but that's the nature of nature. It's worthwhile for the hunt. But when they're sort of usually on a bull run, they're going up and down, they're really active, they're breathing lots, they're breaching because they're trying to get the attention of the female. And then you kind of just line it up on the screen. And then, there are laws around in different states of how close you can get to them and whatnot. But with the drone that I've got, you can just whack the 3x zoom on the camera and it's like you're right on top of them. It's unreal. And yeah, from there, you're just observing something that's, like, again, from a different perspective. You can't it's almost like there's no one around. It's like watching someone when there's no one around and you see their true characteristics. Like I'm convinced when there's a boat around, they change their behavior because they know that someone's around them. But when you're out in the water and it's just the deep sea and they're just doing their thing like they would anywhere else, it's spectacular. Like they have personalities. They interact different in the water with each other. They're smart animals, and I just love them, like seeing them from above. And I try and portray that love when I take a photo of them. I've got hundreds of photos of whales that I've never released because it kind of photos just touch me at different times, I guess, and the different mood that I'm in when I edit them. One of the pieces that I released with Gamma, I sat on that photo for a very long time before it had meaning for me to release it. And yeah, like they're one of the best models. Like they're a hard model to use because you can't talk to them and tell them to roll over or, can you just move to the left a little bit? And when they're on a bull run going up the coastline, they're moving really fast. So not only are you trying to, hover in place and get a photo of them, but you've got to, maneuver the camera or the drone and keep up with them. And they might be going sort of 60 kilometers an hour up the coastline. So you're flying pretty fast, trying to frame them and capture them at the same time, record them smoothly because you don't want to have jerky motion when you're filming them, and then just not lose them when they dive under. And it all just comes with practice. Like I've been going to whale season now for the last 4 years, and I really want to go tomorrow because they're all up the coastline now. But it's never a guarantee. I could go there and I might not see one. So that's part of the game.
100%. And so, tell me about, you just brought it up, so I thought it's an ample time to look at it. The piece that you dropped, and you dropped it as prints. This is the one of one, the whale for the halving. But just this moment, and do you remember this experience and this particular whale and what that day was like?
100%. Like I remember every photo because every encounter is different. So this was a mother and calf off Mollymook Beach, I believe it was. And it was late in the afternoon. And because of the camera type that I was using, the water was really dark. The sun was sort of setting in the background, like behind the coast. So only the highlights were really highlighting when they were slapping down. And this was a juvenile that was jumping. It's just like having kids at home. Like they're absolutely chaotic, running around, running amok. And the mum was just sort of moping along, really, really tired. She looked tired when she was swimming. And just this moment where it was sort of laying on its side, and then it just did this one arm slap while I was watching it, and I just captured the moment. And this was the moment that it was. And obviously, the way the photo is framed here, it's not one that would work well on social media, like on Instagram, because it's the wrong sort of frame. And so I just kind of sat on it for a bit. Like it's still a great photo. I really loved it. And then when the halving was coming up for Bitcoin, I thought this piece just hit so many sort of feelings with Bitcoin, with the halving. We talk about Bitcoin whales being in the space, or just whales in crypto. And that's kind of like why I love minting whales, because we all talk about whales. We're like, well, do you own a whale? Because like you can't call yourself a whale if you don't have a picture of one. So yeah, I saw this piece and I've been working on it, and I really just wanted to get the contrast between the depths of the ocean and nature coming to the surface, which is what this piece resonates with. And then obviously the Bitcoin halving, it's a Bitcoin whale. It just hit all the different topics in one piece, and that's where we went from it.
Absolutely, and it's an incredible shot, and there's just like so much going on that you can look at all aspects of it. And if we look at that Ocean Ordinals collection of yours, which we've got here, talk us through each of the pieces briefly, and then let's talk a little bit about getting photography on Bitcoin, and also why you found it so special.
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, inscribing on Bitcoin or just anything in the space, like I've always been interested in technology. When it started from the drone technology, then started releasing stuff online, and then I learned about the NFT space and kind of sat on it for a while, just like most people do. I was hearing more and more about it, and people, most normies, they still say it's a scam as such. And I thought, well, like I said, I take a practical approach to everything that I do. And I thought, well, if there is a market for this and people are buying it and sharing it, well, there's obviously something going on here that needs to be explored. So you can either sit in the background and miss the boat, or you can embrace it. And I dived headfirst. Like I never looked back. Like it has absolutely changed my life, the Web3 space, starting from minting on Ethereum and then now to Bitcoin, which has just been unbelievable with the support that I've gotten there, especially through Gamma, and learning I felt like I was going back to square one, inscribing on Bitcoin. I remember sending you messages just that don't make sense because I just didn't understand. And the one thing that I loved about Gamma and yourself was that you gave me the time to explain things to me, which is what I love doing to creators as well. When they're trying to learn something, if you have someone who can just hold your hand through it and basically give you the basics. One of my collectors, Xenophone, who was a big Bitcoin ordinal supporter, he put me in a group chat with Rock Toshi, OX Brizzy. These are people that I didn't know in the space. I didn't realize sort of how influential they were with their collections and whatnot. And they gave me the time of day. I was a nobody in the Bitcoin space, and they are, the more I learned, they are pretty high hitters in the Bitcoin world. But they gave me their time to explain what things are and just even the right terminology, like changing from minting to inscribing and all these different things. So I was trying to learn sort of what that meant and what that looked like. And then when I started realizing that you can't mint a 50 megabyte picture, inscribe a 50 megabyte picture, that really sort of, that stubbornness kicked into me. I was like, well, we need photography on Bitcoin because it is inscribed forever. And the whole purpose of this is legacy, right? So this is our digital gold. Bitcoin is going to be around for forever. Like I just don't view a world without Bitcoin blockchain technology at all. Like I really think that mainstream is coming for it, and I wanted to be a part of that. And when the opportunity arose that I could put my work onto a Bitcoin, and my family, my kids could go back and say, hey, that was my dad's photo that was inscribed on Bitcoin, when everyone's got Bitcoin, why wouldn't you want to explore that that technology? And then from that, with ocean work, it's tricky to kind of you've got to almost teach yourself the opposite of what photography is to get like the biggest file and the maximum sharpness and all these different things, like for prints where you've got the highest resolution because you want to blow it up on a giant screen. But with Bitcoin, it's kind of like working backwards, which I love because it's just a different creativity tool to use. And with waves, the one thing about waves is you can kind of get away with it a little bit because the less resolution there is, the kind of weird more detail it adds as well with waves, because there's so many different textures, especially with the piece fusion. The lesser detail kind of gives it detail. It's really weird way to describe it, and that piece there it speaks on sort of that moment in the waves that I was talking about before, where the insane flow is just going down into the earth, and it creates this this generative art piece. And there's definitely it's a learning curve. There's still stuff like I would love to put video on Bitcoin, and I'm going to do it. Like it's going to happen one way or another. Hopefully the costs, like we the space is ever growing, so there is a cost restraint, but we'll always find a way around it. And it was really special to I inscribed the first whale sharks ever on Bitcoin, and I'm pretty sure this is the first ever humpback whale inscribed on Bitcoin. And it's all well and good to say that, but when you actually zoom out and think how big the world is, that they are there, and like I was the first person to do that, like that's special. Like I really, really, really love that. And it's just been a dream ever since. I've never looked back in the digital world. Like I've said, it has changed my life, and it's something special that we all should share, especially on Bitcoin.
100%. And yeah, like you said, you've been well collected, and I own the prints of like the on-chain edition of that halving piece. So it's been a very special journey for you. What advice would you give people, let's getting onto Bitcoin, but more so who are curious about drone photography and where would they start? Like, how do they get a drone? I'm assuming naturally there's like, entry level right up to super expensive and things like that. Like if someone said, I just want to get into it, I don't know anything, what would you tell them?
Yeah, well, it's very easy these days because with all technology, every year it gets better. And the drone technology now is 10 times better than when I started. So the entry level drones that you're getting now were like the high end consumer drone technology when I started. So you can, like, I am sponsored by DJI, who is the leading drone company in the world, which was a dream come true, like to be picked up by someone who, I just bought their products and started posting, and then they, reached out to me to create for them. Like, wow. And I'm a big advocate for their work. It is straight out of the box, where There's all the safety features which you want, so you can crash it, but they've fail-proofed it over the years, where you can be flying it at a wall and it goes, hang on, that's a wall, you shouldn't be flying that fast into that, I'll stop. And that's what I say to people, like, you don't need to spend thousands of dollars. It's just like any camera. The best camera you have is the camera you have in your hand, whether it be your phone, what they call a little film camera, anything, like, to capture the moment. It's your take of it. And the same thing with drones. You don't need a $10,000 drone to take a good photo. You can use a consumer drone, like a very cheap base entry one, and get amazing work. It just requires a little bit more work post-processing. And there's lots of tools out there that are for free that can help you do that. And understanding different limitations with time of day. If you're going to be shooting sunrise, a higher end drone would be helpful. It's not the be all end all, but you probably will get a better photo. But if you just wait a couple of hours and you take your consumer drone out when the sun's a little bit brighter, you're still going to get an amazing photo, an amazing experience. And the whole idea is just get out and have fun and fly, because that's what it's all about for me, is just going out and exploring and having fun and being in the moment with nature, and having a camera in hand and taking what you can see.
Yeah, and I can see that smile that when you're talking about that authenticity, like, shines through when you're speaking. You mentioned, you're sponsored. You've had some pretty crazy things happen to you lately. You got picked up by Estee Lauder to put out a huge campaign for them. You put out a piece in the 6529 memes collection. Yeah, tell us about some of the sort of, and you got picked up to go and shoot something, I think, was it Fiji? Yeah, tell us about what's going on at the moment in the life of Tim.
Yeah, so 2 years into the whole journey, I won the Australian Aerial Photographer of the Year, and I was published in the magazine around Australia. And that was the moment where I just thought, wow, what is happening here? Like, to receive this award, to be sort of, I'd say, the best in Australia, because I definitely don't view myself as the best in Australia. There's a lot of really amazing photographers out there, and who I really look up to, who are Australian based. But to receive that award was so special for my journey, where I came from and where I want to go. And from there, things just started to really pick up with sponsorships from companies, brands. And like you mentioned, I got to take my whole family over to the Maldives for free to shoot.
Sorry, I said Fiji.
Yeah, it's just as good. And we're hopefully going back next month. And just these little opportunities that have arisen from something that I just love doing as a hobby, it's just been incredible. Winning multiple awards, which I've never been a big awards guy, but I saw other people entering, and there obviously is a financial incentive to enter these things. And then to be winning them, I just couldn't believe it. Just seeing my stuff printed in magazines, which is not something that I've ever been used to seeing. And I'm taking my kids to the shops and going, look at this, boys. Like, and they go, oh, I remember when you took that photo, Dad. And I'm like, oh, look, it's in a magazine. Like, for me, that's awesome. And then, getting, like you said, getting picked up by these leading brands who are just finding my stuff organically online and really sort of making like a living from it. And it's just been really special. Like I said before, it's been life-changing, being able to do something that I love. I don't view it as a job. I don't view it as sort of like a burden. I do it as a hobby. It works on my time. And as soon as it starts feeling like I start feeling pressured, I just take a step back, and it just works out. I reach, like, the most stressful part is sort of sometimes it's when you mint, because I feel like you're putting a part of your life on chain and you want others to love it. And then if it doesn't get that instant gratification, I guess, like through a sale or something, you can be like, oh, maybe no one else likes it. But that was early on in the stage. Now I'm going to mint as much as I can and inscribe as much as I can on Bitcoin, because I think 10 years from now, it's going to be special, that all the photography that's in the Web3 space.
Yeah, and you and I have reflected on the fact that photography on Bitcoin is almost a bit poetic, because you're capturing a moment and then you're eternalizing that moment. You mentioned, your kids are proud of your work. That's awesome. What about your wife now? You said back when you started, you're like, hey, honey, look, this is a rock. What does she think about your photography now?
Yeah, well, as much as the success that I've had, a lot of that goes to her. Like, she's the backbone of the operation as well, because without her, I can't go and do the things that I want to do. Getting up early in the morning, that puts the burden on her, because she has to get the 3 kids ready. I have 3 young boys. And it really is a team effort. So as much as I win the awards and go to these places, it's all for her as well. Like, she should be able to enjoy, reap the benefits of what I'm doing as well. And I hope that she got that when she got to go to the Maldives and when we go back. But she certainly, like my kids played a big part in sort of my journey as well, because kids have a very short attention span. And I used to play, like when I'd create a video, I would play it to them before I post it. And if they lost interest within like 2 seconds, I knew it wasn't going to do very well online. Because if I can't capture the attention of a 5-year-old, what chance do I have of an adult who can just go and onto the next one? Which is a very weird approach to take. But when I started like doing waves in reverse and my boys were looking at it and they were watching the whole thing going, whoa, it's like, well, that's got to be a winning concept, right? But yeah, so it's definitely a team effort, like the whole photography thing. I know it doesn't come across that online, but like yourself, with having a family, it's always a juggling act where it can work. You know, I have to be mindful of, because I do hyper focus on things, I have to be mindful of when to hyper focus and when to sort of switch off as well. And it's tricky, especially in the Web3 world, being down in Australia, because most of the Web3 world happens while we're asleep. And starting off, it was hard, like trying to balance sleep with being active, shooting, being an active parent, and being involved with their lives, as well as trying to sort of create something that would last a long time. It was a massive balancing act, which we never get it right. We're still humans. It's still a learning curve. But I feel the more that I did it, the mistakes we made, the mistakes I've made, we're better off for it. And now I feel like my workflow of being active in the space, but having that balance between sort of, I don't want to say real life, but my personal life, my career, as well as my online sort of life, it's kind of all coming together as such, and it makes it a lot less stressful. And realizing that you don't have to be on the pulse all the time, like, you know, being sales driven. As soon as you become sales driven, you don't enjoy it. You have to take a step back. Like, that's what I've found. Yeah, it's more organic when you love what you're doing, when you love posting stuff and you love being online, engaging with people. Good things happen. As soon as it starts to become forced and you see other people having success, I see a lot of people online who sort of get upset by seeing other people succeed. And I'm the complete opposite. Like, if I take that practical approach again, if I see a landscape photography piece getting sold, that makes me excited, because that means that photography is back in, and I will 100% celebrate that over being jealous of someone making a sale. That's great. Like, this is what we want. Like, we can't be upset when it's not happening. So we should be celebrating it. And it makes it a lot easier to navigate the space, because it can suck you up and spit you back out otherwise.
100%, Tim. I think that's a great place to leave it. There's a lot of learnings that come out of there. We love what you do. It's a pleasure to have you as a Gamma partner artist. And thanks so much for your time. I think people are going to love having a listen to this.
Yeah, thanks, mate. I'm always happy to chat. And I really appreciate Gamma for everything that they've done for artists. It's by far the easiest entry point to inscribe onto Bitcoin in it, and it displays photography amazingly over all the other platforms that are out there. So I'm more than happy to be a partner.